Come with me as I go to visit some saints in coffee jars. This fascinating exhibition tells the story of the relic collection of Bishop Grimes, the first Bishop of Christchurch. As you enter the gallery, the first relic you see is arguably the most important of all, a fragment of the true cross itself. I'll let Christchurch archivist Triona Ducey tell the story of how these sacred objects found their way here.
3 years ago, while the Cathedral of the Blessed Sacrament down on Barbados Street was being deconstructed, the archaeologist on site, Carolyn Kerrigan, discovered a tabernacle with coffee jars and a Schweppes bottle and just a few little items that we knew had been buried there in 1975 by the then archivist, Father Kevin Clark. When we took them out, they were waterlogged, but when we took them out and drained them and decanted them, these coffee jars held relics that had been on display in the church 100 years earlier. The relics were human bones, some of them labelled, some of them not, of saints, and then beautiful little reliquaries containing relics of various saints over the years. And that just got us very excited as to what we could do with these relics. The biggest question we had was why they were buried and why in coffee jars. But I think Father Kevin was a very practical man. Coffee jars are airtight, they're usually watertight. There was a jam jar that wasn't watertight. The coffee jars protected the relics for well over 40 years. And so even though it didn't seem like a good resting place for relics, it was actually very practical. The reason why they were buried, we're not entirely sure, but we suspect from Vatican II, there was a big meeting in Rome in the 1960s that kind of changed the face of liturgy in the Catholic Church. And part of it was taking the emphasis off relics. So it wasn't that they were still, it wasn't taking away from their value, but it was very much saying that they shouldn't be central in places. So then 10 years later, when the opportunity arose and the cathedral was being reordered, Father Kevin put them into the jars, into a tabernacle, and buried them underground. And that's where they stayed. It should have been for 1,000 years. Unfortunately, it was only the 46, I think, in the end, because of everything that happened with the earthquakes.
My favourite exhibit is this amazing thing. Tiny, tiny little contact relics that include a huge number of important saints, with these microscopic handwritten labels. Somewhere amongst it all is a fragment of the Blessed Virgin Mary's veil. With the gallery filling up, it was time for me to go. But the Catholic in me just couldn't resist leaving this secular place with the sign of the cross.